Hello, everyone. Welcome, 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 and welcome to Cy Tell Us. It is Cy Tell Us time. Cy Tell Us is an informative online streaming TV show hosted by myself, Cy, and that I showcase all types of businesses in and around Atlanta, Georgia, that brings you close and upfront to Atlanta's own oasis of various business owners and entrepreneurs, from restaurants owners, executive chefs, construction owners, financial advisors, authors, clothing boutiques, and everything in between. Cytellus informs you of the showcase guests of their who, what, where, when, and hows of their establishment, enabling you to patronize and enjoy their merchandise, inform you of their locations and contact information, and also enabling you to call in and talk live to the showcase guests that we have. And then also, you can ask them any questions that you are yearning to know about themselves and about their business. And also, be sure to tune in to Cy Tell Us every second and fourth Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And also, be sure to call in our number, 470-251-4343. Again, welcome to Cy Tell Us at Status Network on Live TV. We have a fabulous guest today, Mr. Andrew Snorton. He's a fabulous, great author. Let me give you a little bit about information about him before we delve into him exactly, before he can really elaborate. And you're in for a very special treat of a show. I guarantee you, you're going to be so pleased. Now, Andrew is a New Jersey raised Wake Forest University alumnus and member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, with a track record of writing for Examiner.com from March 2010 through July 2016 and other publications. He has extensive experience in the public and private sector, including his time as an educator in Gwinnett County Public Schools in Georgia. His expertise ranges from serving as an advisor for Snorton Enterprises, conducting education-based work and press media services for smaller businesses through his work with Creative Community Solutions, LLC, and community investment via his role as a board member with the Lead Foundation Incorporation, including its initiative for creating and developing reading programs via the Literacy Project with sites in Metro Atlanta, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and Chicago, Illinois. Among the other boards he sits on include Family Food Festival of Atlanta, the Alphas of Atlanta, Incorporated Alpha Derby Weekend, the Greek Alumni Advisory Board, Wake Forest University from 2016 to 2019, and the School of Divinity, Wake Forest University from 2016 to 19. Previous boards include the Association of Wake Forest University Black Alumni, president from 2011 to 2015, and the Wake Forest University Alumni Council from 2011 to 2016. His previous first book, Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep, Thoughts on Love with Joseph Snorton, released in January of 2017, is selected for the Mississippi Book Festival, August 2017, and the Literary Festival of Charlotte of October 2017, among other readings, signings, and events. The book is a poetic rendition of conversations with his relative Joe Snorton, their frank, humorous, reflective look at love through the lenses of family, friends, loved ones past and present, community, along with self-reflection via human and spiritual lenses, making an engrossing and captivating read. So we're going to be discussing all of Mr. Snorton's accomplishments, his future accomplishments. Also talking about the book, again, Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep, Thoughts on Love with Joseph. And then also 9 Stories of Faith, Volume 1. Andrew Snorton, welcome to Cy Tell Us.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. It's a pleasure and a privilege, and definitely I'd be remiss in not saying, for those listeners out there who are in North Carolina, South Carolina, in that immediate area, please take any and all precautions with the pending weather and the pending hurricane. Even though some people might have the life experience of living through one, everyone is different. So please take any and all precautions. And for those of you that have relatives out there, please seriously make sure to check on them.
And our thoughts and sincere prayers are with everyone. Just please be safe. Please be safe. Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Now, what I wanted to delve in and ask about as well, I read as much as I could. But the one that I want to first start out talking about is the Nine Stories of Faith,
Sure.
Volume 1. Tell me first, initially, how did you come about even the title, the subject matter, who you were going to decide to interview, and that whole process from the beginning to the middle to the end?
Sure. The impetus behind Nine Stories of Faith really started about July to August of last year.
Okay.
Unfortunately, a gentleman that I'd worked with who had his own nonprofit, Project Mail, unfortunately, it was really a tough time. It was a situation dealing with suicide. And knowing some of those types of things when people feel that they're between a rock and a hard place. I know me personally, like the previous time I'd spoken with him was like 3 weeks before his passing. And I know when you've lived life, you know that everyone's going to have a period of struggle, but there's some people that are living with things that run so deeply that if there's not any type of grounding or what have you, when they really feel they're between a rock and a hard place, there's no telling what can happen. So I'll admit the concept came after the fact, and so the biggest regret that I have is I didn't do it sooner. But having said all that, like I said, it started off with the idea all of us are dealing with something. But I wanted to take it a step further and delve into the question, what are some of the things that people are dealing with every day? So when you understand what people are living with and dealing with every day, it gives that struggle of the moment a whole lot more perspective. And that's not only for the readers, I'll be honest, sometimes it's for myself. Like seriously, sometimes it's for myself.
That's for everyone.
Yes, ma'am.
That's so true.
Yes, ma'am. So what ended up happening is starting about August of last year until about October of last year, I went ahead and started doing random interviews. The people I interviewed are people that I know. All of them were given the opportunity to use an alias, but there are some people, like my second cousin Carrie, that's like, bump it. I don't mind you put my name out there. And there are other people that were really open to it. And in interviewing them, it was looking at what is your biggest daily hurdle or daily struggle. And part of it is for all of us who are dealing with something at the time to have a lot more perspective. But what things are you doing to still make sure you're living a life of purpose? And that opens up the lenses of your faith and spirituality, as well as best practices with health and wellness, things along those lines. So each of the 9 stories, all of them are important, regardless. And what I did to take it a step further, the majority of the people I interviewed are of Christian background. But I understand that oftentimes there's not the dialogue across faiths. So two of the chapters focus on an individual who is of Hindu background and a family of Islamic background. And those are important because, unfortunately, you see a narrative where if you're not like me, there's something wrong with you. And people take that to extremes without really, it's a proverbial, you don't judge a book by its cover.
Exactly.
You got to take a step further. You got to read the book in order to understand what's going on. And it's the same thing when we have to have those cross-discipline conversations. So each person or each chapter, each group talked about what they are living with each and every day. What do they do through the lenses of their faith and spirituality in order to draw perspective? But what are other things that are done? So people who are living with a mental health challenge, what do they do through the lens of medicine? What do they do through the lens of involving their families so they know what triggers things along those lines? One of the people I interviewed happens to be my second cousin, and he talked about life after incarceration. And after being incarcerated for about 10 years and being out for a little bit over 5, one of the things that he talked about that keeps him focused and centered is the very same verse that he read each and every day while he was incarcerated. It's still the same Bible verse that he reads to this day. And looking at what he's doing through the lens of his family, what he does through the lens of community. At the time when we interviewed, he was talking about establishing his own nonprofit. That nonprofit is established in Christian County, Kentucky, in the Hopkinsville, Hoptown, what's going on. And he's actually now going out on the circuit, not only speaking in those areas like Hopkinsville, Elkton, and other areas, but taking it a step further, working with the mayor's office to look at strengthening intervention programs so elementary, middle school kids get access to the resources that they need in order to make sure they're making smarter decisions, whether for their educational attainment, their community investment, being more committed to family. Those are the types of stories that are talked about. Another chapter focuses on a sports journalist based in the state of Louisiana. And before he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, admits he tried to kill himself multiple times. But he talks about what he does through the lens of his faith, what he does in regards to his daily routine, how he involves his wife, his children, his immediate, his immediate and extended family, to where he's a very active force in Louisiana sports journalism. But not only that, just being a resource in cultivating additional journalists of African American background. So with his membership in the National Association of Black Journalists. So even though he is living with something, he is still living a productive life. Another person who I interviewed, young lady living with multiple sclerosis, and part of what she does, in addition to what she does as part of her routine, going to Sunday school, going to church, or she doesn't go, now the beauty of technology going online, is that she uses medicinal marijuana, and she uses it each and every day because there is research that shows that it's proven research that in addition to like glaucoma and other things, that it can be something to help manage that. And here's someone who's traveled outside the United States. So you think about it, based on the data, 90% of the U.S. population will never travel outside the country. Oh, goodness. So here's somebody who is living with a health issue, but has traveled outside the U.S. So if you're kind of healthy and healthy and able and what have you, it's like, wait a minute, if here's someone who's living with a health issue that's been able to do this, maybe, there's a world outside my window that I need to explore and investigate. So in looking at that thematically, again, what is one's biggest daily challenge? What do they do through the lens of their faith and their grounding, as well as other best practices? So it's a perspective builder. But on top of that, having that stronger conversation across the faith community and looking at what are universalities between, in this case, Christianity, Hindu, and Islam. So like I kid around saying, you're probably not going to see me on the corner, with the final call and selling bean pies. But if our colleagues of Islamic faith are going to greet me in the traditional greeting, wa assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam, which translates peace unto you and peace back, I'd be a fool to block that particular blessing.
Exactly.
So maybe when we look at those commonalities, it can be a stronger operating base for the stewardship, the outreach, the advocacy that is part of those charges across faiths. And finally, with the title 9 Stories, and I took a little bit of, I'll say, literary license. For those scholars of Christianity, you should well know 9 represents the 9 inches of the nails that were driven through Christ's body.
Yes.
And not to say that what we are living with will ever parallel that example, but thematically speaking, all of us are going to deal with something that's going to hit us to the core. All of us are going to deal with something that will shake and disturb our faith and disturb our perspective. And it's okay to feel that way. It's okay not to feel okay.
Helps us grow.
But it's a difference between feeling that way and being stuck there. So it's okay if it's like an episode, but don't let it evolve into a mini-series.
Exactly.
And when you look at it through that way and look at it through that thematic lens, it's like, okay, you're going to be led through it. You don't know how, you don't know when, but you're going to be led through it. And when you're led through it, you do have a stronger testimony. You do have a stronger story to tell. And just like, we kid around, like if you have children or you're around kids, like watch your little brother or little sisters watching you. As you get older, people are still paying attention to the moves you make.
Oh, of course.
They are, and how you deal with adversity, how you deal with success. You don't let it go to your head, and you also don't let it damage your heart and your spirit. So, like I said, we're all going to have those moments. We're all going to have those moments of doubt. We're all going to have those moments where we're not okay. And I think, sometimes we think that because of who we are, or the title that we have or whatever, that we don't have the luxury to not feel a certain type of way. You're going to feel a certain type of way. And it's okay to feel that way, but just don't be stuck there. And when you look at the testimonies of these individuals, it lets you know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's not like an oncoming car or it's not an oncoming train. There is light at the end of the tunnel.
All of those stories and all of those challenges, they're motivational. And as you said, we're going to go through something, but I love what you just said. Allow it to only be an episode in your life and not a miniseries. Meaning, don't let it consume you. Embrace it, rise above that challenge, but just realize that it's always only going to be momentarily. It's not going to be the totally definition of who your existence is and will always be. I love that. Now, I also wanted to ask you said that your cousin, while he was incarcerated, he had one verse that he recited. I'd love to know which one that is.
And I don't mind opening to that. So the chapter that deals with his story is chapter 2.
Okay.
And I'll read specifically that particular verse that he mentions. The verse that he reads each and every day is from the book of Psalms.
And let me just do something right quick. I mean,
sure.
I just don't want this microphone to walk in your face.
Oh, okay, cool. Hey, no problem.
Yeah, I want them
Can
to
y'all
see
see
all
me?
of you. Yeah, because I know I want to be seen.
Sure. So the verse,
So, yeah, we don't need it all in your
sure,
face.
the verse that he reads each and every day is taken out of the Old Testament, Psalm 46. Chapter 46, verse 10. And he reads this each and every day: "Be still and know that I am God, and I will exalt you."
Amen.
And that's the same verse he read each and every day, and still reads that each and every day as part of his routine. So it's one of those, when you keep yourself centered, you know, elevation really does come from above.
It does. It does.
It really does. It comes from above. And don't get me wrong, obviously elevation comes in the form of people who encourage, people who support.
Right.
But it all starts, you know, at that spiritual center.
It does. And then within self-motivation as well.
Yes. Well, you know, look in the mirror.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's almost like if you think about you think about Alex Haley's Roots, and you think about that very first, you know, whatever first episode, that opening scene, when they hold the child up and they hold up to the heavens, they say, "Nothing is higher than you."
Yes.
And I'm paraphrasing, so it lets you know, you're a product of the divine.
Exactly.
You are. So remember that when you're going through whatever.
Exactly. And again, that it's only temporary. And whenever I'm going through a challenge, I just talk to myself and I'm like, devil, bring it on. Is this all you got? I'm still, and not that this is a religious show or a religious book, but I'm just speaking about myself. I used my God as a motivation to allow whatever I'm going through to teach me what I'm supposed to get out of that. And then I still love God because he is the center for me, and it just gives me the strength to go on, because we're going to have challenges every day. I mean, you see the homeless. I'm driving here in this traffic jam.
Atlanta traffic. Oh, you don't say.
I was like, what is this? And then I said, wait a minute. I am living in Atlanta on my way to Status Network to be on live TV on Cytellus. I just moved here less than 90 days ago. I know there's a God. You know, this wasn't planned. Then we're graced today to have our author, Andrew Snorton, join us. You know, so all of this is positive. I'm like, my goodness, we're either going to start literally on time or we're not, and we're still going to get an hour. It's still a positive. You know, but again, the traffic today was even just negative. But back to my point, I just talked to my God and asked him, please let me learn what you want me to out of this. That's all I'll care about.
Yeah.
And help me to be even better. As they said, the true character of man is when he's going through a challenge anyway. You know, not when everything is going great. You know, so that's what I always pray for is, Lord, keep me to be maintained, being graceful and self-respecting and dignified, and then positive. You know, because again, we're always going to face something. Everything we're having is going to be a challenge, and it's going to be an uphill climb. But guess what? We're going to get to the top of that hill, and it's always a great view. I guarantee you that. Now, what I also wanted to ask you about, if you don't mind, I don't want to delve too much into the book. You got to buy the book? you know, if you want to know all these great stories. But would you mind telling me what he was incarcerated for? Does he even say that in the book or not? If he doesn't, then don't say.
I'm gonna say I'll leave that to your I'll leave that one to your imagination.
Okay.
I will say this. It's one of those, knowing the backstory, and we talk a little bit about the backstory in the chapter. I understand the why. It was something that wasn't necessary, but I understand the why.
Oh yeah.
And again,
And we all could have been in that.
and again, it all comes back to, and he talks about it, where he was offered different plea deals and things along those lines, and he refused because he
probably
knew
wasn't his truth.
Exactly.
blame him. I would've done the same thing.
So when you think about it through that lens, and you think about, just how really just positive and powerful a presence he is, it's a real blessing. It's a real blessing, but it also lets others know that there is a path. And even though, we talk about, in delving a little bit more on, incarceration, like the recidivism rate and things along those lines, where it's like, okay, someone finishes, but then they're thrown back in the same situation, which means there's a stronger likelihood of them going back in. Here's somebody who really, because of his grounding, was able to use that, and that's what makes him the stronger person that he is. That's what makes him, for lack of a term, that gravitational force in that area. When you can have a mayor seek you out, when you can have city council people seek you out, when you can have people, like I said, across Hopkinsville and Fort Campbell and Elkton and Crofton and areas along those lines, not just southwestern Kentucky, Owensboro and what have you, they're seeking you out.
Wow.
You're not looking for it, they're seeking you out. Or I'll admit, when he can give a shout about, this is my cousin's book, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's like, it just lets you know that when you're authentic about your experience, you're willing to be open about talking about, things that didn't go well, things that didn't go right, because it's so easy to talk about, I won the Tiddlywinks contest, or I was playing Monopoly and got Park Place and Boardwalk and was running people right and left, or I was able to run a Boston when we were playing spades because we went 10 for 2. But, for someone to be that open and that frank, it lets you know. It speaks volumes. And that's,
people are seeking him out.
It speaks volumes about everybody. Even one of the, before we pivot, even one of the chapters that I'm really excited about, and let me pull the exact chapter in here. One of the nicest stories in here is chapter 6. And the beauty about chapter 6, when I interviewed the gentleman, he said his biggest daily challenge was making sure that he would be prepared to be the best potential spouse that he could be.
Wow.
Never been married, and was one of those, when he looked back and looked at taking inventory of his life and looking at his faith and spirituality, his work ethic, things along those lines. The thing that he was worried about was, just being the best potential spouse. And lo and behold, he got married over Labor Day weekend.
Oh,
so
good.
Excited and happy
to a
for him.
worthy woman, I'm hoping.
Yes, definitely.
This one at the bottom right.
We're going to go with the speaker.
Welcome to Cy Tell Us on Live TV at Status Network. Thank you for tuning in, and please state your name and what city you're calling from.
Hello, my name is Ty, and I'm calling from Tulsa.
Oh, hi, Ty. Thank you for calling in. How are you today?
I'm well. About yourself?
Oh, but doing well. And please tell us, what question do you have for our showcase guest, Andrew Snorton, our author?
Well, I just want to say that I'm moved. I don't know. I can just really connect with what he's saying. I too have been through adverse times. I too have had to lean on faith, and I'm really compelled to know more about this gentleman who's speaking about, his family member that was wrongfully incarcerated, or was incarcerated for 10 years, and look how his life has done a complete 180. So I would like to know your social media outlets. I believe your email behind you, but I wanted to know how and where I can purchase the book, and how I can, I want to read it. I'm very intrigued about the book and knowing more about your story as well.
Sure. Well, Ty, correct? It's Ty, correct?
Yes, Ty.
First off, Ty, thank you for taking and making the time to tune in. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate the fact that even in your statements, you were sharing a little bit about who you are, but even bigger, whose you are. So that in and of itself, just in that portion of your conversation, says a lot. And I'll make sure to state multiple times the website and social media, so that this will be the first time, but won't be the last. For social media on Facebook, the actual Facebook page is Author Andrew Snorton. Repeat, Facebook page Author Andrew Snorton. On Twitter and Instagram, the handles are Author A Snorton. Again, Twitter and Instagram, Author A Snorton. The YouTube channel is Author A Snorton, and the website information is asnorton.wixsite.com/author. And in regards to availability online, yes, it is available online by way of Amazon. And the bookstores where I'm located right now include Pan African Connection in Dallas, Texas, Read More Book and Card in Madisonville, Kentucky, Book Addictions, which is located in Roanoke, Virginia, Park Road Books, which is located in Charlotte, North Carolina, and in Metro Atlanta, including Black Dot Cultural Arts Center in Lithonia, Georgia, Madu Bookstore located in Greenbrier Mall in Atlanta, Georgia, Nubian Bookstore located in Morrow, Georgia, and Book Nook Decatur, which is located actually off of North Druid Hills. And there's more bookstores coming, but the most immediate way would be through Amazon. And another point in regards to my contact email. My contact email is authorsnorton@gmail.com. So I would suggest, if you have an interest in purchasing an autograph copy, just email me through there, and whatever I've got, in stock, take care of it electronically and go ahead and ship it out. And I've shipped out copies as well. So thank you for taking and making the time. Thank you for, like I said, giving us a little bit of insight of who you are, and continued blessings with all you're working on. Seriously.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. And do you tour? Do you speak at colleges or any
That's
other platforms?
That's a very good question. This year, I've been blessed to speak at Central Carolina Community College up in Sanford, North Carolina. The areas where I've done book signings include Metro Atlanta, Birmingham, Alabama, Charlotte, North Carolina, Chicago, Illinois, Raleigh, North Carolina, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Jackson, Mississippi, Memphis, Tennessee, Nashville, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So I have, and I'm definitely more than open to. Ooh, seriously, I'm definitely, well, two things. Number one, I'm definitely more than open to traveling out that way. We'll figure out how to make it happen. But also another thing that I've done is for different community organizations, and different nonprofits. I've done benefit signings where I've donated a portion of the sales back to different entities. No, and I say that because part of it is giving back, and it's one of those things. None of us got here by ourselves. There are people. Regardless of what you're doing, professionally or community-wise or fitness, or whatever, there are people who thought enough of you to give you a chance to help you as best as they could. They might not have known everything, and it might not always have been the best delivery, but when you pause and take inventory, there are people that gave you a shot. And as you elevate, this is just me, as you elevate, you don't forget the people who helped you out. You recall people who might have, been more of like, for example, is a difference between being on the field, being in the stands, and chilling in the parking lot.
So true.
So I'm just going to leave it at that. There's a difference between being on the field, being in the stands, and chilling in the parking lot.
That's true.
So that's all that is, basically.
Good question.
I thank you, sir. And one more time for your personal emails. I definitely want to autograph a copy of that book.
Sure. Yeah. The email address where you would make that request is Author A Snorton. So Author ASNORTON @gmail.com. And what I'd ask that you do is email me who it needs to be made out to, the correct spelling, the correct mailing address, and then through PayPal or whatever electronic means, go ahead and take care of the transaction. Then once that's confirmed, I'll go ahead and have it, personalized, because you want to make sure you're spelling the person's name right and it's going to the right person, and get that shipped out. Usually I ship it out priority, so it's like 3 to 5 days basically.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, ma'am.
Turnaround.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Quick turnaround.
I don't know. I mean,
Email.com.
yes. Once again, the email is author A Snorton. So that's author ASNORTON @gmail.com. And again, if people are willing to take time to support you, you acknowledge that, you are grateful for that. You don't take it lightly. And it's kind of what I've alluded to before. Whatever success you get, you don't let it get to your head, because if you do, you will be you will be knocked back down to size.
I was going to say it won't last.
It won't last.
Yeah,
So
guaranteed.
so again, Ty, I appreciate you taking the time to call,
Yes.
taking the time to tune in and listen, taking the time, as my grandmom used to say while she was living, see about folk, and thank you.
Isn't that the
Seriously,
truth?
thank you.
That is-
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ty. We really appreciate you taking the time and being part
No
of our
problem. Thank
discussion.
you.
And be
No
sure
problem. Thank
and
you,
get that
guys.
order in so you can get a copy of that book. You're going to love it.
Absolutely. I greatly appreciate you guys' time. You guys have a wonderful night.
All right, thank you.
And
You
as
and
well.
yours do the same.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Wow, that's fabulous. Now, I also wanted to ask you, just to touch on a little bit that I read here. It says, why faith and why not? But here it says, sometimes this is all someone may have to make it through the day, let alone anything that can physically, emotionally, and spiritually affect them to the core. I just want you to elaborate on that. for us.
Sure. Sometimes
those
it's
who
like
missed it.
when people are going through life's challenges, and when you're taking inventory, all of us, I'll say this, sometimes all of us don't feel like you've got that person you can talk with, or they feel like
So true.
they don't have access to resources, or what I alluded to before. You think about someone who's in the clergy, they almost always sometimes don't feel they have the luxury.
Well, because again, who can they lean on?
Who they can, or
I
even
mean, as a human, of course they're leaning on
Yeah,
God,
but-
yeah.
yeah.
Again, physically in front of them.
Exactly,
Who's
or
gonna-
even
who's going
pi-
to hold their hand?
or even when you pivot, when you think of people who are counselors, let's say a guidance counselor or a psychologist or psychiatrist, part of their therapy is going to other people, but then ultimately where can they go? It's almost like sometimes based on your title and your profession, you feel like you always have to have it together, or if you don't have it together, you're not given the luxury to show it. Or even taking it a step further, you think about the big conversation this weekend with the U.S. Open.
Oh.
And you think about how certain athletes of a certain gender and a certain demographic are not, quote, allowed to be demonstrative because they're labeled a certain way. Yet somebody else of a certain gender, of a certain demographic can cuss you out, talk about your mama and them, but they're lauded as being intense. But
Right,
you're doing
but-
the same thing.
And then
so
but she's categorized as the angry black woman.
well, and that can
Totally
be,
unfair.
that's not only that, it was a conversation that came up in one of the sports groups and we talked about that. We talked about, here's a good example, someone who's without a job, Des Bryant. Des Bryant gets demonstrative on the sidelines, and he's being a cancer. Tom Brady cusses somebody out, and he's encouraging and getting his teammates motivated. So you're doing the same thing, but it's the narrative is different. So, and I use those parallels to say that there are people out there who think based on the position that they have, or the title that they have, or the role that they play, especially if they're the steady one, they're
Right.
they're the go-to person, they're the steady one, that they don't have the luxury to have a moment, to have a letdown, or things along those lines. So when you feel like you don't have those types of options, you never know what direction someone can go in, and that's where you have to lean on. Sometimes faith is what people, that's all they have to lean on
Yes,
in order to get started through something. I mean, that's a reality for people. And again, it comes back to what I said earlier. There's nothing wrong with feeling some kind of way. There's nothing wrong with having a moment. There's nothing wrong with having an episode.
but you don't want to be stuck there. You don't want it to evolve in a mini series, because then what happens is it filters into everything that you do. You second guess yourself. You doubt yourself. You doubt the people around you. You really, your faith, instead of having that momentary like uppercut, you're getting like body blows and all that type of thing. And it's kind of like that snowball effect. If you don't, for lack of a better term, if you don't put some heat on that snow, it's going to be a problem. So it's really saying that for someone that's reading that press and media kit, if that's all they have to hold on to, it's okay. It's like, hold on. Or, what they say, it's always darkest before the dawn, or even depending on whatever your perspective, whether it means, prayers multiple times a day facing a certain city or whatever. It's like, it's okay to take time to pause and just try to slow down the moving parts. And just like, when you give a student a reading assignment, you ask them to break it up into smaller parts so it's easier for them to take in. Sometimes your big problems, you have to break them up into smaller parts.
Oh, yes. That way
You have to, in order to keep it manageable.
Because when we look at things sometimes on a bigger scale, it can be overwhelming.
Yes.
And that's really pretty much everything.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe in. Well, I am just so pleased that you are here today. Tell us about, like, what events do you have coming up?
Oh, definitely.
So we
There's
can see you on this
multiple events.
and
Yeah.
where people can go.
Well, let me share the upcoming events. They're going to be between
wait a minute, let's get
September
this
and
call
October.
in.
But let's take this call first.
Yes. Thank you for calling Tell Us. Please state your name and what city you're calling from, please.
Hi, yes, this is Sigrid, and I'm calling from Bronx, New York.
Oh, hi, Sigrid. Thank you for calling in. Thank you.
Yes, hi, good evening. So I have a question for Mr. Snorton. So as you, regarding the 9 books of faith it is, or
Yes, ma'am. The 9 stories of faith. Yes, ma'am.
9 stories of faith, my apologies. So
That's okay.
I'm just wondering, because I'm actually going through my own, kind of spiritual journey right now, and it can be challenging at times to, continue or keep the faith, depending on, what you're going through and what you're wanting God to kind of deliver or answer. And I'm wondering, as you were interviewing various family members, did any of them ever talk about some of the challenges they've had with kind of keeping and continuing the faith, or did they ever lose the faith while they were going through this journey?
That's a good question. And I want to say the chapter that kind of really talks about how it's still a work in progress is definitely the chapter 5, which is titled Floyd Mayweather versus Jerry Cooney. Now, for people who aren't boxing fans, Floyd Mayweather, boxing-wise, is arguably one of the top boxers of the last 20, 25 years across weight classes. And some would argue that based on how well he's done, he could arguably, you can transcend that across different times. Jerry Cooney was a boxer in the early 1980s who was quote, a fast rising figure until, I want to say it was Larry Holmes knocked the daylights out of him and his career just fell apart. And the reason why we looked at that chapter is the gentleman who I interviewed, who's a journalist, before he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, tried to kill himself multiple times. Now, since his for lack of a term, discovery and his plan, he admits there's still some days where he doesn't feel like getting out of bed. And he feels like he's Jerry Cooney, who Jerry Cooney was like 6'3", 6'4", about 225, getting beat up by Floyd Mayweather, who's in a different weight class, like 5'9" and like 160, 170. So you raise a good point. It's not as if that, okay, I have this realization and all is better now. I think the realization is this is what I'm living with. And I understand that part of that journey is there are going to be days that are smooth as silk and days that are smooth as sandpaper. But if I understand what I'm dealing with and living with and understand when I'm, especially in his case, when he's having those days where he can't get out of bed, it's a blessing in his case that his support system is right there in his house, his wife and his kids. It's a blessing that his extended support from his family, his wife's family, are right there in that immediate area. And I'll tell you what else, and this is something he told me as part of the interview. There were days I just shoot a text or shoot a message on social media. He's like, you didn't know that I was having a, well, I'm not going to repeat verbatim because we're in a professional setting, but you can use your imagination. And it comes back to what I said before. All of us, whether it's whatever life challenge it is, whether it's money, whether it's, family, people who are in your life, people who are no longer in your life, your health, whatever. There's almost always going to be something. So even when you're led through something, it's almost like it's getting you geared up for the next challenge. And I think when you understand that and see that, and even if you had a day that wasn't that great, you're still here. And if you're still here, it means you still have an opportunity to do something. Like even today, for example, I was supposed to teach class this morning. Didn't happen because I had a technical issue and I had to email through my phone. That's just real talk. I had to email through my phone, and I'm sure they're watching. They're like, "We missed you today. What the heck is going on?" No, that's real talk. I had a jacked up start to my day today. Seriously, I really did. I really did. But the blessing in all of that was, based on what's going on, here's what I can do. And then later on, I was able to keep the class that I taught this afternoon. And then, as our host said, navigate through Atlanta traffic, which isn't the same as being up top, but yeah, it's a world of difference down here. I can say that right now. Got here safely, got here with my mind relatively right. So when I got a chance to pause and take inventory, I had a jacked up part of the day, and I know that there's going to be some jackitude around the corner. I know that. That's the reality of it. But before I get so consumed by it, I've got to pause and take inventory. And the fact that I'm having a conversation with you, seriously, that's a blessing. Yes. If I wasn't here, we wouldn't be having this talk. And the fact that you're raising the question, the fact that you're like, I'm going through it, my journey, and there's some parts about my journey that are just totally like messed up. And you're wondering like, why it's you? Yes. And what have you, like seriously, and those are things that we don't want to admit, but it's the truth. Why is it me going through this? Why am I going through this hardship? But before you get so consumed in that, that's where you have to take time and pause and take inventory. You still have the capacity to make a phone call. It doesn't seem like it's that big a deal, but think about people that can't do that. You have the capacity to still articulate, and you have the capacity, even in this part of this call, that you're still sharing a little bit of your story. Think about people that have challenges finding their voice, and you still have yours. So even with those little things or those things that people pass off as being commonplace, you start feeding off the little things. There's almost a parallel of every big idea starts small. Coca-Cola didn't start off as a conglomerate. It was something around somebody's tool shed or whatever. Yeah. Jack Daniels. Gee, I wonder what I'm thinking of. Jack Daniels. That's a great. So every big idea started small, and it didn't happen overnight. Look, let me use another example. If you've been to a cookout, this is just me. The best steaks are marinated, which means what? It takes time. You don't go to the grocery store and throw it on the grill. Yeah, you go ahead and put some seasoning to it. So even during this, like as you're riding, hopefully the front of the struggle bus, think about it as this is where you are right now, but just because you're here right now doesn't mean that's where you're going to be.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you for that. I just have two more. One question and a comment. Well, maybe two more questions. The first one is, I guess, what were some of the common threads that you noticed while interviewing the 9 people for this book, The 9 Stories of Faith? And also, have you thought about being a motivational or a public speaker?
Those are two good questions. The first question comment, what was the common thread? Ultimately, to me, it was the balance of having some type of spiritual center, but understanding that it doesn't just stop there. It's one of those things like I can pray for, like think about, without going too deep biblically, you think about the Israelites praying for manna to fall from the sky. Well, I mean, they had their faith in God, but Lord knows if I want to get something to eat, I got to get my butt up and fix something. Or I got to go to the store, whether it's the dollar menu at McDonald's or the surf and turf or whatever. So it's one of those, what they say, what faith without works is dead. Yes, you have to have that center, but look at the actions, like I was explaining with the gentleman who lives with bipolar disorder. He understands there's a medicinal lens he has to go through and operate through. There's that support lens from his immediate family. His immediate family also has to educate themselves so they can be the best resource. It's you've got your center, but now what are you doing to build upon it? And sometimes it doesn't take that long. Sometimes it takes bumping your head 1,100 times before you get there. But the bottom line is you're going to get there. And when I look at his example and look at all these individuals, or the chapter focusing on Islam is with an actual family. They have their faith, they have their moments where they do their meditation, prayer, reflection, but then they seek out what are things that need to be done to supplement and strengthen that. And that does sometimes take a little bit of time, but when you look at, let's say, if there's a medicinal need, taking time to research and utilize that. If there's I'll say a social science-based need, whether psychology, sociology, going to your counselor, or even informal, who are those people in your circle that will be willing to talk with, listen to? They are sharing, words of encouragement. Sometimes that word of encouragement is putting a foot up your backside. Like I can tell you, like real talk from like personal experience, having gone through a divorce. Part of what helped me get through it were the friends of mine that called and checked on you, or sent you a message, or like, we're going out for lunch, and you didn't feel like it, but you going. And you're going. Plain and simple. Those types of things are things that allow you to have that breath of fresh air, to pause, to slow down the moving parts and see it for what it is. And it comes back to one of the things we said earlier. It's okay to feel some type of way, and it's okay to experience an episode, but you don't want it to morph into a miniseries.
I was thinking that exactly. What you said.
Seriously, but those are the common threads in regards to motivational speaking. I have no. You know what? I'll say this. I'll say this. I have been blessed this year, as I alluded to earlier, speaking at Central Carolina Community College up in Sanford, North Carolina, and looking into speaking for more colleges, universities, community organizations, things along those lines. And I want to make sure I'm doing it through the lens of being authentic, being accessible, being open with things that have worked and have been great and smooth as silk. But by the same token, you've got to admit when things are smooth as sandpaper. Because if you only talk about everything that's gone well, you leave people feeling some kind of way. And I think one of the best examples I can think of in regards to being open, and this kind of pivots in regards to one of the things you alluded to on the nonprofit hat with one of the individuals who's a fellow Wake Forest alum, Jerry Braswell. And I remember we had him speak, and he spoke about how he was academically ineligible, even though he was a parade All-American, and yes, he was a teammate with Tim Duncan and Tony Rutland and Craig Dawson and teams like that from the 90s. But because his grades, he was eligible based on NCAA standards, but the university had a higher standard. Therefore, he sat. Wow. He sat until January, and if he didn't get his grades up, there was a very distinct possibility he might have been out for the whole season, which meant he could have transferred. I mean, there's so many different possibilities, but he got his act together. He graduated, meaning he didn't just finish his eligibility. He graduated with a degree in speech communications. He actually played overseas for about 12 years. And he's based in Metro Atlanta in regards to sports training and things along those lines. So I use his example to say that we have to be open with speaking about the successes, but we also have to be open to saying, hey, we made boneheaded decisions, or we stayed on the rough side of the mountain a little bit longer than what we planned. But it's okay. It's okay. That's life. It's okay. And even in being open with, headaches and heartaches and all types of things. It makes us more human. It makes us more accessible. So instead of you walking in the museum and you can't touch the artwork, it's more you're sitting at the cafeteria table 2 tables down. You have the ability to walk over and I don't know, make a paper airplane hit me upside the back of the head and be like, "What's up?" So I mean, it's cool. It's cool. It is. It's cool.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Snorton. Just one more thing. I know that you did give your email address. Could you give that again? And then
Sure.
also, too, where I can purchase your book?
Yes, ma'am. Let me go through the entire items. Website is A Snorton, so that's ASNORTON CCS dot Wix WIXSITE.
And let me interject. Yannette, could you put up that last flyer because it's going to have all of those on there as well.
Okay. So the website is asnortonccs.wixsite.com/author. That's the website. On social media for Facebook, the Facebook page is author Andrew Snorton. The Twitter and Instagram are author A Snorton. And the YouTube channel is also author A Snorton. And yes, the book is available on Amazon. The beauty is on the Facebook.
Okay, great.
Yeah, the beauty is on the Facebook page, author Andrew Snorton. When you click on the Shop Now button, it goes straight to Amazon. And for
Great.
and bookstores where I'm located right now, I'm not in any bookstores in the tri-state,
Yes.
New York, not
Yes.
yet, New York,
Yes.
New Jersey, or Connecticut,
Yes.
but right now online. And again, for folks that wanted to purchase an autograph copy, email is going to be the best way. Actually, email through authorsnorton@gmail.com, but also through the social media handles on the Facebook, the page author Andrew Snorton, and even through Twitter and Instagram author A Snorton. You can inbox or email.
Okay.
Main thing is make sure I have the correct spelling of the name, mailing address, and then it's just a matter of just sending the PayPal information. Once I have that, then I'll get it shipped out to you. Usually it's going to be priority mail, which is like 3 days, 3 to 5 days.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I look forward to reading your
Oh, you're going to
your
love
book.
it.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Well, thank you. No, seriously, thank you for taking the time to call in. Thanks for sharing. Seriously, thanks for sharing a little bit about your story and where you are with your journey. And please believe, even though you're still at a certain point, there are people that are motivated by what you're doing. And the fact that you're like, this is where I am. But you've actually started where other people might not still have the courage to start. So the fact that you're starting already says a lot. So thank you for sharing that. And even, you know, like I said, sharing where you are, you're still empowering and encouraging other people. So thank you.
Oh, so positive.
Thank you. Thank you so much for normalizing that too. I think sometimes when we're in this journey of, you know, trying to be a better Christian or whatever it is, we forget that we're human, and
Yes.
you know, sometimes it's okay to feel sad in this journey or to kind of lose the faith or backslide, but as long as we continue to keep on and we're
Yes.
trying to strive to be better. So thank you so much for normalizing that. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Look, you learn from people who have been there, done that, and are a heck of a lot wiser than you. So it's cool. It is cool. It is living. like they say, when grown folks are talking, just sit down and be quiet.
That's true.
Just listen.
Yes, thank you so much.
Oh,
All right,
thank
you're
you.
welcome. Thank you.
And thanks for
Have a
calling
good
in.
night.
Oh, you as well.
You
Have
too.
a good night.
You
Secret.
too.
All right, goodbye.
All right. Bye bye.
And I just want to read this one snippet again because it just really touched me. And it's just like at the beginning of the book of 9 Stories of Faith in Volume 1. I just love how it began. It said, everyone is going through something. Well, while people hear this, it may not always resonate when they consider their own personal struggles, ranging from family, friends, career, or themselves. It can sometimes get to the point where they have little to no hope, faith, and feel they are stuck where they are. However, where you are is not where you'll always be. When you get a point of reference to others' life's challenges, it can give people perspective, even a restoration of their hope and grounding. And then you went on to explain how 9 people are bold enough to share their stories, including the central questions centered on the following. What is your biggest daily struggle or challenge? What do you do to work through it? And then again, you said with an array of stories over varied religious and philosophical approaches, they show there are constructive ways through life's challenges, conventional and otherwise. And again, these are their stories of faith. That really touched me. Again, you had me at the very beginning when you said everyone is going through something, and that will always be the case. You may not be going through it Monday, but it's going to be something going on next Thursday. It's always so, and some of them are minuscule and some of them are just colossal. It just varies.
Exactly.
But again, that just helps keep all of us grounded. And then as you said, what got you through was when they said, hey, you're getting out the house today. You're going to have lunch
Man,
with
look,
us.
I can tell you there are times I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to be bothered. I just wanted to hide out. I was really a hot mess is an understatement. And there are people who are like, we're getting you out the house today. Or like I said, the words of my grandmother on my mother's side before she passed, one of the more powerful statements she ever left me with is, take time to see about somebody.
Amen.
And it, you do it in your own way, that call, that message, that let's grab some lunch, or let's watch the game, or let's just go out for a walk in the park or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be grand. You think about like the holidays are a great example. The holidays can be a positive spike, but they can be a negative spike. And sometimes there's sometimes that people feel like they have nowhere to go. And even sometimes there's some old hot mess going on during that time.
And they don't want to go where there is a lot of family and togetherness because they are possibly single, and then they feel like they're going to be the third or fourth.
Man, look at here.
Because that itself can be a negative. It's like, you feel Bob Humbuggish, and being around all that joy can be overwhelming. It really can, because you're like, well, I'd be faking it. I don't feel that.
Or it's one of those where it's like, people, you feel like because you're not at a certain space and place that all of a sudden, something's wrong with you and whatever. And I mean, it happens, and those are things that people struggle with. And I'll admit, depending on what was going on life-wise, like holidays, there were some holidays that were just not good. I'll openly admit they were just not that great because of, they weren't. That's the reality of it. But again, it's one of those, if I had stayed stuck in that space and place, wouldn't be here. Plain and simple.
Everyone, again, be sure to get your copy of Show Us These Books.
Yeah, so the book that we've been talking about.
And I get signed copies.
Yeah, a lot has been 9 Stories of Faith, Volume 1. And this is the one that is definitely more interview-based across Christianity, Hindu, and Islam. And thank you to all the people who took time to be a part of it, seriously. Oh, I'm getting that now on live. All right, and I guess we can talk a little bit. We can talk a little bit about the first one. This is the first one, which is Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep: Thoughts on Love with Joseph Snorton. This was the first one that was written in 2017, and the backstory behind this one is it was really supposed to be my second book. As a reminder, back up your work, because I had written during the summer and during the fall 2016, it was a collection of political essays dealing with, the different hot topics, community-wise, what have you. And then October 2016, the laptop crashed, and I didn't have it backed up. And it's like, oh, goodness. That episode that I have, I'm not going to repeat everything that was said. But after about an hour, I kind of paused because I knew I wanted to do something that was more poetic, more of a poetry theme. And you think about poetry is amongst, quote, your easiest form of writing, but it's your most accessible and arguably can be your most powerful. So when you think about the parallels between poetry and music, you think about that song lyric or that hook that gets you. Well, the derivative is poetry. And I have to acknowledge 2 people that were very helpful with my journey in writing during the summer of 2016, because as I had written for Examiner.com, which was an online magazine. It shut down in July of 2016. And writing wasn't necessarily a challenge, but when you have to stretch your writing, where you're not writing a 1-2 page article, like you're writing whatever 90, 100, 120, 130 page book, it's like, it's a little bit different. But I have to
and like I said before, you don't forget the people who helped you
Yes,
out.
who helped
So the
you.
two people that really helped me were Darius Gordine, who is a published author based out of South Carolina. I have to acknowledge his Howard University roots and his
Yes.
blame beta nonsense.
Oh, goodness.
Blame
Yes,
beta.
yes.
That's all. That's he knows what I'm talking about. And celebrity host Tyressa Ty, who darn, you talk about someone who's just a powerful figure in the field of arts and entertainment. Currently part of the team that works with the entertainer Dougie Fresh. Those two were really the key motivators and the key people that helped me out.
Oh, kudos.
So
Yeah,
when
thank
my
you.
when my first book crashed, I always wanted to do a poetry book, and I'll admit there was a pivot that took place between October and December where part of the impetus was it was a dissolution of a relationship, and then it triggered some of the conversations that were had between extended family. And the backstory on Joseph is back in 2014, I was fortunate to be I was fortunate to have attended the memorial service for Dr. Maya Angelou. Dr. Angelou was a professor at Wake Forest University for a little bit over 30 years, and her memorial service took place at Waite Chapel on campus. So, of course, that was when with Oprah Winfrey spoke, Michelle Obama spoke, former President Bill Clinton, Cicely Tyson spoke. But the funny thing is when I got my invite, it was in the name of Joseph instead of Andrew. So it's kind of like you can see Andrew to Adam, Andrew to Alex, but like Andrew to Joseph is like had me feeling some kind of way. And my mom and dad
I can imagine.
understood what kind of way I was feeling. But in doing a little bit of tracking, found this distant family member of mine, and of the conversations that we had, we looked at the topic of love, and we looked at through the lenses of love, the relationship with your parent or guardian, the relationship with your siblings, your extended family. There's a chapter that kind of delves in because of my membership in Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated. There's a chapter that delves with that why you go that direction. So it's not just an alpha chapter, it's a chapter for anyone, especially a member of any of our predominantly Black Greek letter organizations. Why you do the community service and outreach when you don't always get the immediate feedback and response. People who are in your life, people who are no longer in your life. Self-reflection through your lenses in the final chapter, chapter 19, is self-reflection through spiritual lenses. So what I did, unlike a lot of poetry books, is the beginning of each chapter is a portion of the actual conversation. So the reader knows the audience, knows the context. So when they get into the poem, they still have to do decoding. But instead of what happens sometimes from what I've read, it doesn't happen all the time in poetry, but sometimes in poetry, the reader's on this level, the writer's on this level, and you're being polite, but the reality is this. So to make it more accessible, by putting that quote, almost like that movie trailer in the very beginning of each chapter, the reader knows has an idea of the content, has an idea of where the person's coming from, so it's easier to decode. And the fascinating thing behind this is I actually read this for the first time in January 2017. I read the proof for the chapter with the relationship with your father, chapter of the relationship with your mother, and it was read at my parents' 50th wedding anniversary. And when people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s can come to you saying that exemplified the relationship with my parent or guardian,
Oh, goodness, yes.
and you never had the privilege of meeting their parent or guardian, that says a lot. And even one of the chapters that deals with a bad breakup, because that is reality, and you've got to be open with it, like that was just not a good time. There are people who have, quote, moved on from the standpoint of they're in a healthy, happy relationship, but they're still holding on to stuff from 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago.
90%
And they felt like they felt like they couldn't articulate that. And so for them, like that chapter, those chapters that deal with that, that's their cathartic release. So in being able to do something along those lines, and with this first book written in 2017, I'm very grateful to the Mississippi Book Festival that gave me a chance. And they do an awesome job. As a side note, if you're that's a festival you definitely need to target, as they definitely try to provide opportunities for younger authors. So as a first-time author in 2017 to be accepted for that festival and be accepted again
what an
in
honor.
August, it's a blessing. And it kind of means you're doing something right, and you're doing something that people feel like they can connect with.
Yeah.
It's a blessing. So that was the first book, and that's the one that I alluded to in the kit, where I was able to do the Mississippi Book Festival in August 2017, then October 2017 the Literary Festival of Charlotte. Those were the two main ones I did as a first-time author, and it kind of ties into one of the probable questions. Well, what have you done this year? I've been blessed to do the African American Authors Festival up in Nashville, Tennessee. Family Food Fest Atlanta allowed me an opportunity to go ahead and not only sign, but I actually donated a portion of the sales back to them. The Atlanta African American Book Festival. So Farai Caldwell, who's actually the youngest such festival chairperson in the country, and for him to do a first-time festival in July of this year and have almost 90 authors present, and me being amongst those, that's a blessing. Upcoming
Well deserved.
Yeah, I guess the bridge would be getting back to the original thing. September and October. So here's what's going on in September, October, before I go too much on a roller coaster. So for September, upcoming events for September 25th from 6:30 until 7:45 p.m. through the Atlanta African American Books Festival. They are launching their public discussion series. Basically, not really so much of a think tank, but a thinking and action planning. So with that piece, September 25th from 6:30 to 7:45, looking at the role of the Black writer, which is definitely something. If I can pull if you give me a moment, I'll go ahead and pull the location as to which library it will be in, but it's definitely going to be part of the. Let me pull it. Give me just a moment. This is the beauty about technology, but I'll go through the whole gambit of events. So the upcoming events that are coming up between now and October. So September 25th, 6:30 p.m. It's taking place at the Southeast Atlanta Library, located at 1463 Pryor Road Southwest. That will be from 6:30 till about 7:45. It'll probably go slightly longer, but at least from 6:30 to 7:45 is the public discussion hosted by the Atlanta African American Book Festival. I will be one of the panelists on that, which is definitely a blessing. I'm very grateful for that opportunity. That is free and open to the public. October 6th, I will be in Madisonville, Kentucky, from 1 to 3 p.m. I'll be doing a book signing at Readmore Book and Card, which is located at Parkway Plaza. So that's the plaza located off the Penny Raw Parkway. I'll be there from 1 to 3 p.m. on Saturday, October 6th. They're one of the stores that is carrying both books, so that is a blessing. So thank you to the folks there. October 20th in Washington, D.C., from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Thurgood Marshall Academy, located on 2427 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue in the Anacostia neighborhood in Washington, D.C. I'll be one of the authors participating in the 5th annual East of the River Book Festival. So I'm very, very grateful for that opportunity. And then October 25th in Charlotte, North Carolina, from 7 to 9 p.m., I'll be at Park Road Books, which is in the Park Road shopping plaza in Charlotte, North Carolina. They carried my first book last year. They're carrying the current book this year. And those are the confirmed dates between now and for the month of September and month of October, where I'll, quote, be on the road or be out and about. And just looking forward to, additional signings, festivals, things of that nature.
Rock star.
Oh gosh!
Did you hear these tour dates?
I'll
just to travel.
Hey, I'm gonna say this as anyone who is a writer knows that writing is long term. If you're in this for the immediacy, you're not going to last. The way you last as a writer, this is some free advice. The ways that you last as a writer, yes, you have to use technology. So it's a beauty that even though I don't have at this point a bookstore in the Bronx or in Oklahoma. That's the beauty about technology. You have the ability to order. So you have to use your technology piece. But it's not all technology. Anytime that you are wearing your writer's hat, it is still about connecting with people. And you can't solely connect with people just online. You have to do your own book signings. And you have to do book festivals in order to build your credibility. Now, there's always an outlier and there's always an exception or two, but in general, if you're trying to last and trying to not only that, but be a constructive piece within writing, like I'll say this, and you can take this for what it want. You can put any fool in office, but it doesn't mean they know what the heck they're doing. Anybody, I'll just say this, technically anybody can write a book, but if you don't have anything of substance to say,
yes. Oh,
what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
and
Well, no one's gonna read it.
no one's gonna read it. So I mean, no one's gonna read it. So
won't be a best
so and you do this if you are, and people have heard this for people who are in music who have lasted, people who are artists who have lasted. If you do it for the love and you do it with the purpose of being authentic and accessible, and you do that consistently, you're going to be fine. Might not happen overnight, but I will tell you this, just the uptick in book festivals, the uptick in signing, and the best advice I've gotten was when I had the pleasure, December of last year, I was able to be in Memphis, Tennessee, work backstage with Dougie Fresh's team. And that was the weekend before Christmas, and that was when the power grid went out here in Atlanta. The airports were all messed up. And as a side note, continued prayers and condolences to the promoter of that concert, who was in his late 20s, but died of a heart attack the day before. So when you talk about you have to pause every once in a while, that's an example of why you have to. But I'll always remember what he said backstage. And he's like, it doesn't matter if it's 5 or 50 or 500 or 5,000. If people paid to see me come, I owe it to them to give them the best show that I can, regardless of how I'm doing, regardless of how I'm feeling. That's why he's lasted in this industry 30 plus years. And I say that to say, yeah, there are times I've had book signings where I've had 30, 40, 50 people. And there's times it's been me and my shadow. But you know what? Regardless of what happens, you still treat people with a measure of decency and class. And the beauty about technology, if you document what you do, you give people an opportunity to follow and keep track. And if they see that you're dedicated to your craft, the right people are going to see you. That's true. And the right people are going to give you an opportunity. That's part of the reason I'm on this show. The right person saw what I was doing, is like, you need to be on this show.
And we're
plain and simple.
Glad and thankful that you graced us to come on Tell Us Live TV Status Network. Andrew Snorton, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Could sign my books.
Oh yeah, I got to sign before I head out. Yes, ma'am. I know we got to go.
But again, thank you so much. Again, hold them up right quick so they can see them again. I know you see it in the background, but I want you to see it live.
So the first book is Deeper Than Your Deepest Sleep, Thoughts on Love with Joseph Snorton. That was written and released in January 2017. And it is available on Amazon, as well as the aforementioned bookstores. This is the current release, 9 Stories of Faith, Volume 1. Released February of this year. And again, just as a reminder to keep track of what I'm doing, social media, Facebook, the page is author Andrew Snorton. Twitter and Instagram, it's author A Snorton. YouTube is author A Snorton. The email address is also authorsnorton@gmail.com. But the beauty with the author page, as well as Twitter and Instagram, you can inbox that way. And the website is asnortonccs.wixsite.com/author. So,
and I just want to remind everyone, we have been broadcasting live at Status Network Live TV, but also streaming live on Facebook. But I also want to remind everyone, you can always go to my page, and of course I'm going to tag Andrew. You can always watch these shows again and again on my page, okay? And you can share them and everything because they're always public. Andrew Snorton, thank you so much for being our special guest today. We really appreciate that.
Thank you for the opportunity, seriously. Thank you. And thank you for everybody that took time to tune in and listen in and call in. Thank you. Seriously, thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much. I also want to tell you guys about an upcoming event that we're having here at Status Network. It's an outdoor event, and Status Network presents a day party for the entire whole family. It's Status Network launch party and empowerment concert, Sunday, September 30th, 2018. We also have vendor space available. We have multiple TV and radio stations, giveaways, free food. I love free food, and I know it's going to be delicious. It's going to be from 3 p.m. until 7 p.m. Free entry, live performances, bounce houses. It's going to be here at our TV station, 777 Cleveland Avenue, Atlanta, Georgia. Again, that's 777 Cleveland Avenue, Atlanta, Georgia, here at Status Network Studios. And call us 770-299-3899. Again, that's 770-299-3899. And we want to thank our sponsors, Kids and the Young Generation Movement and the Landing Tracks. And again, come on out to our outdoor event, Status Network, Saturday, September 30th, our launch party and empowerment concert. I'm going to be there. I'm sure everyone else within our Status Network family is going to be there. Bring your family, bring your friends, come on out and just have a good time, because we appreciate our audience. We appreciate our supporters. We appreciate everyone. So please come on out and enjoy us, and come have some Status Network fun in the sun. It's going to be great. Thanks for tuning in. Cy Tell Us every second and fourth Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Have a good night, everyone. Say bye, Andrew.
All right. Y'all take good care. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.